Welcome back to the Elevate series. And I have a very special guest here, Chad Lefevre, who I just met a week and a half ago, Chad.
Yeah, yeah.
Thanks to Dr. Ryan Williamson, thanks to Holly Jean Jackson. And basically, we got into a conversation that was scheduled for an hour as just sort of a meet and greet. And I'm thinking, an hour for a meet and greet's a little longer than normal. I wonder who this guy Chad is. And I have to tell you, Chad, like my mind was blown in such a good way. And I felt so intellectually stimulated. You shifted my worldview during that call. And everything, as soon as we were done with that call, I said, Chad, is there any way you'd be willing to come on to the Elevate series? And I told you what it was about and what it's for, helping entrepreneurs during this time. And I just want to thank you for saying yes to that. So literally just met Chad, but you strap in everybody because he's awesome.
Well, thank you. What a great introduction.
Yeah. So tell us more about you to kind of catch some people up, and tell us about just your background and where you've spent your time developing your perspective and your intellect, just in a brief statement, because there's so much I want to ask you, but I think it's important that people get that backdrop for you, especially.
Yeah, I'll keep it as short as possible because it can be kind of lengthy. 15 years ago, I was co-producing events in Los Angeles where we were bringing together some of the leading thinkers and speakers of that time. 200 to 300 of them we would bring together for a year. A lot of the names that people would recognize used to attend our conferences. The Peter Diamantises, the Jack Canfields, the Tony Robbins, these kind of folks. And it was really these were industry conferences to try to kind of help human beings. It was a self-help world, the human potential transformational world. How do we help human beings become the people they say they want to become? And then as an industry conference, it was like, okay, are we meeting that objective and meeting that goal? What I discovered through that process is that there was an element of the way that our brain works as human beings that was making it very difficult for this industry to reliably meet that goal. It was actually less than 2% of people were attaining any kind of change or transformation in their life, despite spending thousands of dollars on books and courses and workshops and all of this. And it wasn't because the authors or the coaches or trainers in that industry were doing anything sort of wrong. It was because they weren't addressing the elephant in the room, which is that our brain is resistant to change. That we view change subconsciously as a threat. It's the unknown, it's unpredictable, it's insecure. Even change that would be advantageous to us. The biggest nail in the coffin, so to speak, for me when I was researching this was a study that was done on heart attack patients. And so these were people who had had a heart attack, and they were told by their doctor that if you don't make substantive lifestyle change to your diet, your sleep, your exercise, and these sorts of things, one of two things is going to happen within 5 years. You'll either have another heart attack or you'll be dead. Both options are bad. And yet less than 10% of heart attack patients made any change whatsoever. Like nothing changed. Less than 10% made any change. And so when I read that, I thought, okay, then it doesn't matter if you want to build a better business, have a better relationship, lose weight. Those things are so much less important to staying alive. And if we won't even change to stay alive, then there's something else going on here. And so that made me really curious as to what was it that that keeps us trapped in sort of these habituated, conditioned ways of being. And so it led me on a bit of a journey where I was interfacing with neuroscientists and behavioral psychologists. And I'm a student of game theory, complexity theory, systems thinking, all of these different sort of modalities. And so I was just really interested with how do we use the way that our brain works to advantage us as opposed to allowing it to run the current script that it's running that keeps us small and less than what we could become. So I co-founded a game development company. We called it a neuromedia video game company with a partner of mine, and we had a great team. And we had this crazy idea that we would use the addiction proclivities of the brain. So one of the things I always tell people is that all human beings are addicts. And I know that doesn't sound great. And people are like, what is he talking about? Like, because we tend to relate to addiction through the lens of drugs, alcohol, and sort of things that are bad for you. So we have this sort of relationship to addiction as it's a bad thing. But our brain is an addiction making machine. I redefine it as just reinforced behavior. So, we're constantly reinforcing behaviors. Now, how do we reinforce the behavior? Well, our brain neurochemically rewards us for certain behaviors, even if those behaviors are detrimental. So, coming back to the heart attack patients, as far as our brain's concerned, that cheeseburger, that steak that you're eating, even though it's high in saturated fat and cholesterol and all the things that your cardiologist may have told these heart attack patients, you got to stop this stuff. As far as your brain's concerned, stopping it is change. It's an unknown, and you're alive. So keep eating the cheeseburger, right? I mean, this is what's going on
That's right.
behind the scenes, right? And then it neurochemically rewards us to keep doing that, through dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, these sorts of things. So when we created this game company, we were like, okay, what we want to do is actually not fight how our brain works, but leverage how it works. So if we could get addicted to things and be neurochemically reinforced to do things that are detrimental, could we also create a scenario where our brain would neurochemically reinforce and get addicted to things that were good for us? Because if it's just reinforced behavior, let's use it to our advantage.
Right.
So video games are a very addictive medium, and we came up with this idea that by playing a video game for 10 minutes a day, we felt that we could actually transform people, and that use the addiction mechanism and then almost Trojan horse positive content into their brain that changes who they are. And our first customer was actually Coca-Cola, a division of Coca-Cola. They were so fascinated by the idea that they took us on, and it was an incredible success. They reported back to us that there was a quadrupling of transformation and increase in performance of their leaders, and all their leaders had to do was play a game for 10 minutes a day. I mean, it was really,
Yeah.
so yeah, it's like, and they ended up playing it, I think, for something like 38 minutes a day, like after hours. Some of them were playing it with their kids, and it had a real profound impact. And so we did that for a number of companies. I think we were a little ahead of our time. Many of the companies who did want to engage us ended up kind of holding and not moving forward. But it gave me a real insight into sort of what the linchpin might be to actually help human beings become the people that they want to become. And that's where I've taken my work now, through our current organization, the most important conversations, and also my private work that I do with people. So that kind of catches us up to right now.
Yeah. So thank you. That was a perfect explanation. So fascinating. So with that in mind, Chad, okay, and we see all of the pressures, all of the disruptions and the changes that are happening. I mean, we look from a neuro perspective, the brain is probably on high alert all the time because it doesn't want to make these changes, but we are being forced into it. Whether we want to go in this direction or not, AI is starting to transform our world. What's happening from a government policy level to any industry that you can think of. I mean, there's change coming at us from every direction. What do we do about it? So what are you seeing, Chad? And what could you teach us based on what you've learned and found to help guide us forward?
Yeah, so the first thing I would suggest that all of us consider is that it's not what we can do about it, but who we can be about it, is the shift in thinking that we need to make. And we have an economy that for the last 100 or so years, for all of the things that we've appreciated about it and the things that's provided us, in terms of cheap goods and access to a variety of goods, comfortable lifestyles, all of this stuff, it really wasn't a sustainable model. And it was a doing based economy. So the exchange was simply after the Second World War, hey, if you come work for company X as an employee, we're going to pay you X amount of dollars a year. You're going to, as a result of that, we're going to set up this whole situation, which was, I think, part of the New Deal and all of these different policies that were emerging around this period of time. We're going to extend credit to you. So effectively today, if you're making $100,000 a year, because of the credit systems that have been set up, it's effectively allowing you to live as though you made $1 million a year. So you can leverage the ability to buy a house, buy cars, buy boats, and extend yourself. And so this was quite an ingenious idea, to create all of this. But what it did is it really created, generations of sort of economic slavery in a way, because now you're beholden to the banks and the lenders and all of this stuff, and it keeps you in the job that you're in. And the other thing is, when you're, and I'm not belittling people who are employees by any means. I just want people to understand the grand bargain that we've all bought
Right.
into as a society, and
Right.
how AI is about to shift that dramatically. So that's the important takeaway here. So, you're an employee, so you're asked to do X, Y, Z. These are your job requirements. Fulfill those requirements. We pay you X. You get this much vacation, and you get the ability to leverage the credit system to buy your house and all of these things. Okay, so that was what I would call sort of a consumptive-based, human doing-based economy. That we weren't asked to be
100%.
human beings in the way that I define it, which is creators. We were asked to be consumers and to just do life and to do things and to consume things. I remember after 9/11, uh, a reporter asked President George W. Bush at the time, what would you recommend Americans do in order to help? Like, people felt like they wanted to help. It was a catastrophe. And his response was, go shopping. Right. And I thought that was so fascinating, because it kind of,
Wow.
without even realizing it, he shot right at the heart of how our entire society was built. It was to consume, to shop, to just do that. It was all about our doing, right? And even when you meet someone for the first time, what's the first thing most people
Yeah. What do you
will
do?
ask that person? What do you do? So we relate to each other as doings, as opposed to human beings, and we call each other consumers as opposed to humans and people. And so we have this disconnect that's been really conditioned and baked into how we see the world. So coming to artificial intelligence, we now have a situation where, through the rapid emergence of AI, that is within only a couple of years going to match or go far beyond what a human is able to do. AI is going to be the doings. It's going to do these things. Like, I've been saying for the last 2 years, I can see right now the total transformation of professions like the legal profession, the accounting profession, the engineering profession, the IT profession, because, and all of these are so-called white collar jobs, right? That people were hired for their area of expertise, for their
That's right.
mind, for their degrees, these sorts of things. But what good is a degree when, let's say, you have a law degree and then you have artificial intelligence that has all of the case law available to it in a second? It has every book available to it. It can write contracts in seconds. I
Exactly.
mean, what do you need an attorney for? I mean, so I do see that there's still going to be humans involved in this new economy, because we're always going to want humans to kind of rubber stamp and watch over the AI. But I'm envisioning a world where there's an enormous amount of what I call AI displacement from the employee world to the self-employed or entrepreneur world. According to Pew Research in 2024, 90% of Americans were employees of companies, and 10% were self-employed or entrepreneurial. Okay, so you have 90%. And we don't know how much displacement is going to happen. It's all a guess right now, and there's lots of great guesses out there. For the last year, I've been researching, and I continue to research all of the different consulting firms and think tanks, and what do they think this is going to look like. I think we're in a 10-year bell curve cycle right now. We're just at the beginning stage of it. We'll probably peak around 2030, and we'll come out of it around 2035. So you see about a 10-year cycle for the total economic transformation. And depending on what data source you look at, we're looking at predictions of anywhere from a 25 to 30% displacement from the 90% employee world, up to potentially 85%. I don't think it's going to get that high. But you and I were talking before we started this today about something that Dell had put out a few years ago, and they still have it on their website last I checked, which is that they were saying that by 2030, 85% of the jobs we will be doing haven't been invented yet. Now, that sounds like, okay, fine, of course. But if you think about what that means, it means you can't plan for it, you can't train for it. You can't predict, for budgeting purposes, how many people you're going to need because you don't even know what they would be doing. So this is a real challenge that we're faced up against. And the last thing I'll say about it is an economy based on human doings. And then when those human doings, who are in the employee sort of, role, are told we don't need you anymore because AI's taking over. I just saw a post this week. Microsoft, a couple of years ago, they froze pay raises, and they were rediverting the pay raise amounts to AI development. And
Wow.
I saw another article just this week of they're not hiring as much. They're letting a bunch of people go. I can't remember the exact number. So the AI displacement is already beginning. You're seeing
Sure.
companies moving people off the balance sheet, and they're just letting artificial intelligence take over the task. So here's the conundrum: people who have been conditioned to be a doer, who have not had to figure out what their value is, how do they participate in a broader societal value exchange as an economy because they've just had to go to work and do the job they were hired for. They've got all of this debt. They've got a mortgage. They've got car loans. They've got bank loans. Maybe they have kids in college.
Or young.
Suddenly they're told, or younger, suddenly they're told, we don't need you anymore. And you can't just go up the road and get another job because this is going to start to happen right across the board, across all companies who are looking to maximize efficiency. There's a mental health crisis, the likes of which I think we're unprepared for, that is sitting right on our doorstep right now. Because when people lose their identity, if your identity is what do you do, and people lose that identity in an instant, and they also lose their ability to provide for their families. They lose the ability, I mean, in the moment, right? It's not like they're not going to be able to figure something out, but who's there to help them figure something out? And what does that even mean in a world where we can't predict what we're even going to be needing and doing in the next 5 years? So we've never really experienced anything like this.
Nothing like this.
Yeah.
Nothing like this. I mean, COVID was a big traumatic shock, and the whole world experienced it all at the same time. And this is what I kind of lean back to is like, well, we experienced that, but this is so different.
Yeah.
And I mean, what I'm thinking, Chad, and I'd be curious your perspective is if I have no idea what the world looks like in 5 years and I can't control that, what can I control and what do I choose to believe? Like, what is my perspective on all of this? It tells me that number one, I need to take excellent care of myself more than ever before so that my
Hmm.
brain is as sharp as possible and I have
Hmm.
the energy to tackle this and that I don't get depressed, right? Which would be so easy to do, or get sad or anxious, right? So when we're taking care of ourselves, we tend to be in a more positive frame of mind, right? So got to take care of myself. I've got to surround myself with the right people, right? So, I mean, I've been telling people in my community unsubscribe and unfollow anybody that brings you down, that makes you feel worse, that is
Hmm.
scaring the crap out of you, like whatever it is, be so careful about your community right now. And
Hmm.
honestly, that was part of the design behind the Elevate series is like, I don't have some grand scheme after this, but I know there's safety in numbers. I believe that what
Hmm.
I want for my future is to surround myself with other entrepreneurs who want to think positively. They want to be a part of the solution, not a part of the problem. And they align in core values and they are willing to be transparent and share best practice. Like that's what I want to create. And this is the first step of accomplishing that. So
Yeah.
these are types of things that I feel like I can control. And then also just trust that I will figure it out when the time comes. So I say, if you can only see 3 steps ahead of you at any given time, well, then just trust that by the time you take one step, a new one will appear. And maybe that's all the visibility that we're going to have for a while. But when you settle into that, maybe there's some comfort there. I mean, but I'd be really curious, what do you want to add to that or take away from? What are
Yeah,
you
no, I
telling
think
me?
everything you said is on point. First of all, I think that the idea that maybe we're only able to see three steps ahead and no further than that, I don't think that's unique to now. I think that's always been the case, but we've deceived and deluded
Fair,
ourselves as a
fair.
society that we can see well into the future. I use as an example um, all of the companies, the startup companies or small businesses who were able to secure investment in 2019 based on pro formas and projections of how much money they were going to be making by 2023 or 2024. And they had this whole grand financial model and story of how this was going to go. And as humans, we're storytellers, right? And we make meaning. So we do this all the time without realizing it. Well, those investors got a shock when 2020 hit and a global
No
pandemic
kidding.
had blown up every projection that was supposed to happen, right? So the reality is we never can see very far ahead of ourselves. And if we think we can, that's just a story. Because you just don't know what's going to happen, right? So on the one hand, this AI situation can sound like it's, oh my gosh, everything's about to come crashing down. I'm not an anti-AI person or a Luddite or anything like that. I believe that technology is a double-edged sword. It's like any sort of technology as a tool for
Sure.
tremendous good and huge potential, but there's also consequences with it, and it also can be used nefariously. So all the things that you're talking about in terms of the importance of community, the importance of maintaining your health, the importance of maintaining your mindset and staying in that sort of positive creator sphere is what I call it. So
Mm.
creativity, from my perspective, is the essence of what it means to be human. So much at the essence that we are naturally creators and we are creating all the time, every day, without even realizing it. Our entire worldview, our perception, the beliefs that we have are all acts of creation. And we don't realize that we've created these things. It's this, there's this old saying, whatever you believe, you're right, right? And it's a
Totally.
create. So if you created that belief, if you totally embody it and integrate it into who you are, you're right. And things are going to happen in accordance with that. And so if people find themselves in a negative mindset around things and they're believing that the world is going to hell, well, they're right, at least for their world and the way they're going to
Right.
see it, right? So our reality is always our perception. And so at this moment in time, you want to take care with what is your perception? How are you interpreting the events that are going on? And if you and don't do it alone. If you feel like it's overwhelming for you, the importance of community, I think, has never been more important than it is right now. As a matter of fact, I think that we'll start to see more sort of community type living situations, like people who are like, I don't know the future, but what I can tell you is if a bunch of people lose their jobs and they can't pay their mortgages, we might see a situation like we saw in 2008, and where people are losing their homes. But if people have lost their homes and their jobs, the natural tendency of human beings is to bind together and work together. And I see that as not a bad thing, actually. It could be really incredible. It could be transformative in terms of what our society ends up looking like. I mean, I'm really inspired when I see a lot of the trends right now, people wanting to garden again and wanting to take care of
No
themselves. And,
kidding.
like, these aren't bad things. This is just change. And remember that our brain hates change, but if we can start to train ourselves to love change and to embrace it and to lean into it, there's enormous potential in this moment in time. This moment in time could be one of the most, it feels gross going through it and kind of crunchy because we like that certainty. But if we lean into it and embrace it as like a moment where anything is possible, because the systems and structures that we relied on for decades are now being reinvented, all of us get a choice to either participate in that reinvention and that recreation or be on the sidelines. And in that case, we've just put ourselves in the position of being a victim. So it's our choice.
I'm so glad that you said that. Absolutely. And, I feel like in my world, I am around a lot of heart centered entrepreneurs. And these are people that are usually introverted. They don't like marketing. They don't want to use the megaphone. It's not natural for them to be on video. So they'll do it, but it's still not natural for them. Yet these are also the individuals who I believe had enough experiences that life kind of kicked them in the shin to where now they have this resilience and this perspective on a different way, a better way. And this is the time that, I'm trying to activate the people in my community to say, you've got to go out there and use your voice. Like using your voice is the way toward a better future. And that's one that I want to participate in. And so I'm helping people to like overcome their resistance and understand that they might have outdated beliefs that are preventing them from, speaking up and to sharing their perspective on things. But I'm saying, hey, get in the ring and let's go create this thing together.
Yeah.
So with that, Chad, I know we're almost out of time, which is like insane. This is why I like that hour that we had, it just flew by, and I'm feeling that same feeling again now. With all of this in mind, I want to just give you this open space of like, what do you really want humanity to know right now? Your perspective, your work, your voice, what wisdom or, do you want to impart to us right now?
Yeah. Well, I guess the wisdom is that change is always a constant, as we know, right? We say that the only thing constant is change. And so rather than trying to avoid the change of this moment and to hunker down or to ignore it or to distract ourselves from it, I believe it's important to lean into it, acknowledge it for what it is. We can't predict the future, but we know it is not going to look the same in 5 years as it does right now. Absolutely. And probably in a way that is exponential, in a way that we've never experienced in our lifetime. And and so by embracing change and leaning into it versus being resistant to it, I agree. Start connecting with each other. Use your voice. Challenge yourself to learn new things. I think it was Mark Cuban. I recently read that his son's friend or someone, in his sort of family dynamic had asked him, what's the most important thing you would tell young people right now? And he said, read every book you can on artificial intelligence, watch every blog, and start playing with it. Like start getting used to using it. Resisting it is not going to help anyone because it's here. And so give yourself, if you're an entrepreneur or a small business owner, or even if you're an employee, start to engage with artificial intelligence, start to network, start to connect to communities. And I think, Amber, what you're doing is creating a community of people who want to start having dialogue and sharing and working together. We're doing the same at the most important conversations. We think of ourselves as a community of communities. So it's not about it being all up to us or our thing. It's a sort of a shared approach. Like, let's work together and get out of the siloization that we've had for far too long, where this is your thing, this is my thing, we're competitors. So I'm big into sort of creative collaboration and working together and just creating a big tent where it doesn't matter what your background is. This is not political. This is not anything. It's human beings being vulnerable, getting together, bringing their brilliance, bringing their creativity, and starting to learn from each other and work together. That is going to be, if there was one piece of advice I could give everyone, that is going to be your saving grace when we go through this massive transformation. Because people who can't plug into community, can't plug into resources, don't feel like they have support, they're the ones who are going to suffer the most.
Oh, I could not agree more. Couldn't agree more. And Chad, as you know, in September, I'm hosting an event. So it's the Elevate Entrepreneurship Summit is what I've called it. Really, it's an extension of this series. So some of the speakers and the guests who have been listening in are coming together at Boulder, Colorado. So that is an invitation to all of you watching. I'm not pitching it. I'm saying you're welcome to come. You're welcome to rub shoulders with the people in the room, to build real relationships. And my community is full of people that just give transparently. This is the tool I'm using. This is exactly how I'm using it. This is how I've innovated in my business. I'm just that kind of leader as well. So you're welcome to be a part of this conversation if that serves you. Also, keep in mind that there are certainly people in your world that don't have access to people like Chad and myself. So it's really going to be up to you, viewers, to share this information with them so that we can help more people faster. And you can simply repost this interview on your feed. I know Chad has been gracious enough to give us a few bonuses on the Elevate page. Those are listed there. And keep in contact with this guy. He knows what he's doing. He's well researched. He's no BS. I love that about you, Chad. I just thank you so much for sharing so openly with me today, and just can't wait to keep building with you, man. I know that for sure.
Yeah, likewise, likewise. It's been a pleasure. And the one thing I would say is, for your listeners and viewers, is one of the things that we have on your page is called the values conversation. And that would be a good starting point for people, because if there was ever a time for you to kind of get some feedback about what your values are, what truly drives you, what truly makes you come alive, it's now. Knowing that as we're going through this transition is going to be so critical to being able for you to, for everyone who participates in it, to understand how they can bring value to each other and start to create community.
No kidding.
Yeah.
And also to your Substack. So I've already gotten access to that. Thank you so much. And just great. So Chad, thank you so much. I'm going to get you out of here on time. Everyone, thank you so much for participating, and we'll look forward to seeing you tomorrow morning on the Elevate series.